Henry VIII, King of England from 1509 to 1547, is remembered as a man of many wives and a king of contradictions. A Renaissance prince who reveled in the arts and culture. He was also a ruthless tyrant who shed the blood of those who opposed him, but perhaps his greatest contradiction lay in his own flesh and blood. When it came, Mary was declared illegitimate, banished from court and left to the cold comfort of her mother's faith, but she did give birth to another girl, a baby who would grow up to be Elizabeth. From the moment she was born, Elizabeth's life was shrouded in uncertainty. Her mother was executed when Elizabeth was just 2 years old, leaving her to navigate the treacherous waters of royal court politics without a guide. They knew that the young king was dying and that his first cousin, Lady Jane Grey, was next in line. On the one hand, she was fulfilling her father's wish that a Tudor would sit on the throne. You see, Mary's behavior alienated many of the people of England. They had hoped for a return to stability and tradition, but instead they got a queen who was more interested in persecuting her enemies than governing the country. This paved the way for Elizabeth to take the throne. It's a story that reflects the turbulent times in which they lived, a time of great religious upheaval and political intrigue. They were united by their common parentage and by the challenges they faced. They were also shaped by the example set by their father, Henry VIII, a man who had risen to power by challenging the status quo and who had never been afraid to make bold moves. Each sibling faced their own unique challenges and made their own mistakes. First, it reminds us of the importance of family in shaping our lives. No matter how much we strive for independence, our relationships with our siblings and parents have a profound impact on who we become. Second, it shows us the challenges faced by women in a male-dominated world. Mary, Elizabeth, and Edward all had to fight for their place in a society that valued male heirs over female offspring, and they did so with varying degrees of success. Finally, it teaches us about the complexities of power. Each sibling had their own ideas about how to wield power and what it meant to be a monarch. Their struggles to balance their personal desires with their public duties are as relevant today as they were centuries ago. But in the end, it was their determination and resilience that allowed them to survive and leave their mark on history. Remember the story of Mary, Elizabeth, and Edward, the Tudor siblings whose rivalry and resilience shaped the course of English history. Mary, the eldest, fought for her place on the throne despite being declared illegitimate. Elizabeth, the middle child, endured years of suspicion and imprisonment before rising to power. And Edward, the youngest, struggled to balance his religious duties with his desire for a normal childhood. When Mary died in November 1558, Elizabeth was already seen as a better alternative. She was young, charismatic, and Protestant, and she promised to restore England to its former glory. And she was doing so as a Catholic, which was a relief to a country that had suffered under the religious persecution of Protestants. Mary established that a woman could inherit the throne, provided she married a Protestant, as her father had stipulated, and that a queen could wield power effectively and independently. However, Mary's erratic behavior ultimately diminished her popularity, paving the way for Elizabeth to ascend to the throne and establish her own precedents for female rule. But on the other hand, she was also facing opposition from those who believed that she had usurped the throne. The link will be in the description below. These were the same people who had supported Jane, and they were now plotting to bring Mary down. Mary's paranoia was fueled by the threat posed by these rebels. She was convinced that they were out to kill her, and so she began a reign of terror, persecuting anyone she suspected of disloyalty. In all, some 300 Protestants were burned at the stake, and Mary earned the nickname Bloody Mary. This was a dark chapter in English history, and it was one that Mary played a key role in. So they spent the last weeks of Edward's life convincing him to name Jane his heir, bypassing both Mary and Elizabeth. But they had not reckoned on the tenacity of Mary Tudor. When news of Edward's plan reached her, she wasted no time in making her move. With the support of the people and the backing of the Catholic Church, Mary declared herself the true heir to the throne. Her claim was stronger than Jane's. Mary was the daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, whereas Jane had no direct royal bloodline. The people of England were also weary of the religious upheaval that had marked Edward's reign. They longed for stability, and they sought in Mary a promise of continuity and tradition. Mary's supporters took to the streets, chanting "Mary, Queen," and within days, it was clear that the game was up. Jane had no choice but to accept her fate and abdicate the throne. Mary was now the Queen of England. Rumors swirled around her legitimacy, and Henry kept her out of the public eye for most of her childhood. This wasn't because he didn't love her, but because he was desperate to secure a male heir. So he married again and again, each time hoping for a son who would end his worries once and for all. With every failed attempt, Elizabeth's position at court became more precarious. She had no mother to protect her, and her legitimacy was always in question. But despite the odds stacked against her, Elizabeth survived. She learned to navigate the complexities of court life, becoming a master of disguise and deception, and when the opportunity arose, she seized it, taking her rightful place on the throne. The young princess grew up knowing she was unwanted, yet still believing in her birthright. Henry's third wife, Jane Seymour, gave birth to a baby boy, a child who would become Edward VI. the long wait was over. There was now a legitimate male heir to carry on the Tudor dynasty. Henry basked in the glow of fatherhood, lavishing attention and affection on his son. But little Edward never got a chance to bask in the glory of his father's love. Jane Seymour died shortly after giving birth, and Henry's fourth, fifth, and sixth wives failed to produce any heirs. Edward was just 15 years old when he took the throne, and he would reign for only 6 years. But in that short time, he managed to make an indelible mark on English history. She excelled in her studies, mastering 5 languages and delving deep into theology. Edward's coronation at the age of 9 was a lavish affair, but it also marked the beginning of a fratricidal struggle for power. By 1547, when Henry VIII died, his will declared that if Edward had no legitimate children, the crown should pass to his sister Mary, provided that she married a Protestant. Otherwise, the throne would go to Elizabeth. This created a rift between the siblings. Mary, who had converted to Catholicism, refused to marry a Protestant. This left Edward with only one option, Lady Jane Grey, a young Protestant aristocrat who had been groomed for the throne. At the behest of his advisors, Edward agreed to name Jane his heir. This was a shocking move that went against his father's wishes and set in motion a series of events that would change the course of English history. She became a practicing Catholic, absorbing the teachings of the Church and the sorrows of her mother, who died believing Mary to be the true Queen of England. This was a heavy legacy for a girl to bear. Yet it shaped Mary into a strong-willed and devout woman, ready to fight for what she believed in, even if it meant going against her own father. He had 3 children who survived to adulthood: Mary, Elizabeth, and Edward, all born out of wedlock, and all destined for greatness and tragedy in equal measure. This is the story of Henry's children, the lost princess, the imprisoned lady, and the boy king, and how their rivalry and survival would shape the destiny of England forever. In the year 1509, when Henry VIII took the throne, the expectations were clear. As the first male heir in the Tudor line, he was expected to marry and produce a legitimate son who would carry on the Plantagenet dynasty. But fate, or rather nature, had other plans. For 8 years, Henry struggled to produce a male heir with his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, a marriage that produced one surviving child, a girl named Mary. In the eyes of the world, this was unacceptable. Henry needed a son to secure the Tudor dynasty, and so he began his infamous search for a new bride, setting in motion a chain of events that would change England forever. The annulment of his marriage to Catherine brought him face to face with the might of the Roman Catholic Church. The annulment would break away from papal authority. Meanwhile, Henry's second wife, Anne Boleyn, also failed to produce a male heir. But before that, there was one more marriage, one more chance for Henry to produce a son, and it was here that fate finally intervened. The young king was raised as a Protestant, thanks to the efforts of his counselors, who saw an opportunity to reform the church in England. When Edward fell ill in 1553, his advisors, led by John Dudley, Duke of Northumberland, thought they had everything under control. Her reign would be marked by both triumph and tragedy, but it was also a chapter that helped to pave the way for her younger sister Elizabeth to take the throne. Now, here's something that might surprise you. Mary Tudor's rule laid important precedents for female sovereignty that Elizabeth later expanded upon successfully. If you want to learn more about Elizabeth's rule, I highly recommend checking out our podcast. As we've seen, the story of Mary, Elizabeth, and Edward is a tale of ambition and adversity, faith and fear, duty and despair. Their story is also a testament to the power of family. Despite their differences, the siblings shared a bond that transcended their rivalries. Today, their story continues to resonate with us for several reasons. So the next time you hear the name Mary Queen of Scots, or see the words "Beware of Dogs" scrawled on a bathroom mirror,